Page 81, Chapter 5, The Illusion of Freedom in an Unfree World. The evidence shows us that the story we have been given is a lie, one that brave researchers have been exposing for some time. The best way for us to deal with that reality is to recognize it and not to give it power over ourselves. We don't have to be taken in by delusions because if we seek transformation, we need truth as our constant companion. Richard Dolan. Every positive move forward in human history is because people come together and speak out saying, we can do better than this and we will. Our history books reveal ample examples for physical slavery of human beings which today seem barbaric and totally unacceptable. We are horrified by accounts of abuses towards women slaves, the African slave trade, and the civil rights movement of Black Americans. We find it unacceptable that entire subgroups are disenfranchised and unable to vote for nothing more inconsequential than the color of their skins or position in society. We also realize that there was a time when such human rights abuses were accepted by powerful sectors of society. That was until people spoke out against such prejudices by privileged groups. We are the first to sign petitions or support causes to free people from long and treacherous work in sweatshops or being abused by profiteers who pay little to no wage, who keep them trapped in cycles of despair and economic slavery. For example, workers trapped in retail sweatshops, blood or conflict diamonds, or cocoa bean farming. The depth of the deception in the non-vegan world. As vegans, our eyes have been opened to the mass injustice towards animals, and we're left wondering how we didn't know about it before. We see the extent of systemized cruelty and wonder what else we need to question. Upon becoming vegan, there is a seismic shift in how you see the world, and you shift from trusting what you have been told to questioning everything you've ever heard. Veganism opens a door to the realization the non-vegan world that is truly dystopian in nature. You now see everything through a different lens of lies and deception and for this questioning view, vystopia is taken to a new level. Living in this dystopia is exacerbated as you face the collusion of those who still hold the view that everything they've been told on the whole is true. The dystopian's sense of alienation is acute and you feel unable to find a way to open people's eyes, and instead you're labeled as opinionated or conspiracy theorist. Whilst it's not possible to build a comprehensive list of all the world's lies, we can identify where mass deceptions are being perpetrated to broadly hide abuses towards people, the planet, or animals. This chapter provides vegans with analogies of other abuses and deceptions to act as an invitation to others to question the extent of the lies they too have been told. By providing examples to discuss the extent of mass deception, we have a tool to explain our dystopia and show non-vegans how more informed choices can change the outcomes for our world, beginning with our everyday consumer choices. In Chapter 6, we looked specifically at how to engage people in these conversations. These communication tools, used with the following analogies, will help you as a vegan be more influential when talking about veganism. Modern-day slavery. In 2013, a report in the UK newspaper The Daily Mail revealed that workers were paid £1.12 per hour to produce iPhones and iPads for Apple Inc. Many of the workers performed monotonous and tedious tasks for 10 hours at a time, and in one factory in the Chinese town in Shenzhen, 18 employees had killed themselves. The factory managers asked for suicide nets to be erected after 9 workers killed themselves in the space of 3 months. Blood diamonds, also called conflict diamonds, is a term used where people are held at gunpoint to mine diamonds in war zones. The diamonds are sold to finance warlord activity. In 2013, it was estimated that 1.54 million children aged between 5 and 11 worked in agriculture in cocoa growing areas. Approximately 8,000 of them and 100,000 of them were engaged in hazardous work. Whilst indications are that these numbers have reduced, companies that transform this into high-end luxury chocolate for the Western world continue the abuse. All of these examples of physical or economic slavery constitute nothing more than modern-day chain gangs. Physical slavery continues but tends to be hidden from the world, and when discovered is abhorrent to most people. We expect progressing countries to condemn nations who fail to protect their citizens and don't afford the same rights to people of different colored skin, gender, nationality, or creed. However, whilst profit remains the main motive of unscrupulous corporations, people will continue to be trapped in economic slavery and hidden from view. Are we still in chains? Now than ever in recorded modern history. In 2016, it was estimated that there were 45.8 million people in some form of modern slavery in 167 countries. Also in countries where we believe ourselves to be free. What if we are even more incarcerated than ever before through mental chains? History holds ample accounts of how people are persecuted for their beliefs when they run contrary to the norm or privileged few. For example, the Spanish Inquisition, medieval witch hunts, religious persecution, prohibition, and political views contrary to a powerful elite. These examples of silencing those who speak out against the norm ensnare the wider population to avoid speaking out against a very limited diet of choices. Today we are told we have a lot of choice in how to live our lives, and that we have a say regarding the physical, social, and ideological world we live in. We are told we have democracy and that our vote counts, and yet we have to choose, often between the lesser or two evils. Often we can even discern between the different political parties, and many become disillusioned and don't even vote. This leaves the door open for some less ethical politicians to take advantage of the apathy and forge ahead with their own agendas, with scant concern for the interests of people, the environment, or animals. The interested reader is directed to writers like Noam Chomsky, John Pilger, and Seymour Hersh, who examine how the powerful few benefit from continuing physical and mental slavery, much of which we can't even identify, even when we are told we are free. People in the West are told they are free within a market economy to exercise choice and qualify of life. However, when we look closely, the majority of human beings appear to have created lifestyles for themselves that are simply not sustainable. And the book communicates how to say what needs to be said when it needs to be said in the way it needs to be said. Mann, 2012. I refer to the interviews I personally held with 54 senior executives about their jobs. Without exceptions, their stories reveal that their private lives, as well as their public lives in the organizations they served, were reminiscent of animals in factory farms. Their collective silence masked their suffering, and they had helped to create their own small pens in which they were unable to turn around and were denied a chance to exercise their curiosity, creativity, and freedom. Like non-human animals bred for industrial use, they are part of an industry that de-individualizes them and requires them to contribute to economic success, often at the expense of everything else. Sadly, this is typical for both executives and other workers of large, modern organizations that focus on profit at the expense of people, the environment, and animals. How deep is the rabbit hole? When movements develop to change socially and change ways of thinking, they face enormous resistance from the majority. Veganism, the philosophy of non-speciesism, is no exception. Changing beliefs take place within a social and cultural context, and mental slavery where we rarely question why things exist as they are. This stops us even imagine a world that is different. It's not just veganism that faces resistance. For example, living in a money-free world, the existence of aliens, free energy, natural healing, and miracles are often dismissed outright because we are enslaved in a mental gaol. We stop being curious, and the most dangerous comment arises: we have always done it like this. 1. Politics. Whilst most people in the West don't face everyday fear of their own governments, freedom is far from the democracy people are told they enjoy. Many believe the government is there for the people and that the people have democratic rights. This is questioned when considering the extent of corporate funding and lobbyists in politics. Most countries have sold off their infrastructure, such as power plants and power lines, to large multinational companies that pay no tax. As these infrastructures were paid for by the taxpayer, one would like to believe the taxpayer has a say in what happens to these assets and are compensated if they are sold. We all know this is not the case. We are told that the government is there to protect and serve the people. However, the Patriotic Act, passed ostensibly to fight terrorism, was actually more about targeting US citizens at home in mass surveillance programs. Why does the government need to look at every email and phone call in the name of national security while funded by the taxpayer? In terms of animals, governments attend to criminalize people exposing abuses towards animals in industrial farming under the guise of biosecurity gag laws. The USA is not the only place that appears to have draconian laws. People who speak out against such abuses often come up against the system that exists to stop them. The Australian federal government is pushing for changes for the espionage Act, so a journalist merely receiving classified material faces 15 years imprisonment. Likewise, animal and as Australian law makers are attempting to change the electoral regulations to force civil action groups such as Get Up or Greenpeace to be affiliated with a political party and thus subject to political finance laws. This effectively ties up these organizations in red tape, leaving little funds to operate. 2. Economics. Media and government in the West talked about the economy as if it was a specific entity beyond the control of individuals. Regardless of what economic system exists where you live, it assumed it offers the means by which you can partake and benefit from the production of goods and services. It's accepted as an even playing field where, with education and effort, you can benefit whilst the government exercises control to protect the most vulnerable of society. Yet unemployment, homelessness, and people living below the poverty line paints a very different picture. An even playing field couldn't be farther from the truth. Huge conglomerates become powerful influences controlled by very few people with deep pockets and become impenetrable. Systems theorists as the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich took a database listing of 37 million companies and investors worldwide and analyzed all 43,060 transnational corporations and share ownerships linking them. They built a model of who owns what and their revenues were, and produced a map of economic power and corporate control. They discovered that global corporate control compromises a dominant core of 147 firms. Within this system, animals become units, referred to as stock rather than sentient creatures. As long as animals are seen as stock and units and property, they will remain enslaved by the economic system. 3. Science and innovation. We live at a time when anything that can be proven by scientific rigor is not taken seriously, yet science, as we know it, is only a couple of 100 years old. When things are discovered like gravity or the electromagnetic spectrum, it doesn't mean they didn't exist before. We just didn't ask the right questions or have the tools to discover them. We don't have to understand how the sun generates energy, but we can still enjoy its warmth, just as the radio frequencies used by mobile phones existed before we knew how to use them. Imagine you lived in the 50s and someone said, imagine having a handheld device the size of a packet of cigarettes that you can use to see and talk to someone on the other side of the planet. They would have laughed at you and labeled you as crazy, just as Marconi, who invented the radio, was taken by his friends to an asylum for saying he heard voices. So what ideas or innovations do we now laugh at saying it's not possible, yet it in 50 years' time will be commonly accepted as normal? For example, anti-gravity technology, free energy, or teleportation. This innovator is always pushing against the closed-mindedness of what is known as the prevailing zeitgeist or spirit of the time. The vegan offers a paradigm shift in how and what we think is possible. Despite the irrefutable evidence that veganism is a healthier, fairer, kinder, and more economical way to live with a smaller footprint. Many will refuse to entertain it until a sizable proportion of the population say it's normal. For medicine, the World Health Organization in 2008 estimated that 65% of global deaths are due to lifestyle diseases such as tobacco, poor diet, and alcohol. This figure was as high as 80% in low and middle income countries. Despite this estimation, allopathic medicine continues to seek cures for these ills, whilst ignoring their key factors. Films such as What's the Health, Forks Over Knives, and Plant Pure Nation reveal that most modern illnesses can be reversed with a whole food, plant-based diet. So why aren't medical professionals listening to their peers who challenge the status quo of what contributes to health and illness? The answer can probably be found in entrenched beliefs and, in many cases, the source of funding and sponsorship. For example, in Australia, 2006, the chief scientific body in Australia, the CSIRO, published the second edition of its massively successful Total Well-Being Diet. The diet encouraged high meat consumption, despite its own scientists pointed out that a meat-heavy diet was related to colorectal cancer. It appears that the research of the CSIRO based its book on was funded by the meat and livestock industry, a body said to benefit from increased meat consumption. Alternative medicine is ridiculed as quackery because it seems to lack scientific rigor. As mentioned before, empirical scientific research is considered godlike and the arbiter of all truth. Any positive outcomes of naturopathy, homeopathy, and acupuncture, for example, are laughed at by allopathic practitioners as all in the mind. However, how it is it that sugar pills, commonly known as placebos, commonly outperform pharmaceutical drugs? Benedict's research in the mid-90s mapped out many of the biochemical reactions responsible for the placebo effect. He uncovered a broad range of self-healing responses that not only relieve pain but elevate mood, sharpen cognitive ability, alleviate digestive disorders, relieve insomnia, and limit the secretion of stress-related hormones like insulin and cortisol. Why is it then that any challenge to allopathic medicine is quickly dismissed? One factor that might indicate why alternative medicine is dismissed relates to the multi-billion-dollar industry behind the medical profession. In the USA alone, the industry was worth $446 billion in 2016. Entrenched beliefs about medicine that serve a rich few keep people firmly in the trends. 5. Education and employment. In the West, people are told they must get an education in order to enter the job market. They have to decide early on what subjects to take at school or college to enter certain careers. This focuses them on becoming specialists, usually to ensure they can earn money and support themselves. However, this doesn't prepare them for the uncertainty that inevitably exists in an ever-changing world. According to Professor Brown, 2017, professor of computer science, 80% of jobs that will exist in 2025 don't exist today. We have to prepare our students and graduates for a world that is essentially not possible to prepare them for. However, the existing education system seems unable to adapt quickly enough to move from training specialists to lifelong learners able to generalize their skills to solve a variety of problems. Looking for a job in today's economy is done in a competitive environment, reminding us that we are part of the economy's machinery. We assume we have to get a job to make money in order to live and increase our choices. People seek numerous ways to become financially free, believing that if they can achieve this, only then will they be free to choose how to live their lives. In our existing economy system, few ever achieve this, and the rest are exhausted from the economic treadmill, with no room to stand back and question their own lives, let alone the world they live in. We are taught this is how it is. The Western lifestyle dream, frequently called the American dream, is just that, a dream which is unattainable. Because our education systems don't teach us to creatively think and solve problems, when new ways of thinking about how we can work and live are presented, they are quickly dismissed as unrealistic. Forward thinkers like Michael Tellinger, 2013, offer fresh ways to rethink our education, society, and our individual contributions. His vision of a world based on contributionism, one that doesn't require money yet isn't socialism or communism, but based on people doing what they love, requires us to come out of the trends and entertain a utopia. In this system, people, environment, and animals wouldn't be economically abused through the pursuit of profit with no responsibility. However, as Einstein said, we need a different level of thinking to solve the problems that create them. We struggle when unable to make sense of things we don't understand. Here, why do so many people suffer, leave us feeling anxious and afraid? There is no shortage of people or ideologies that rush to fill the void, stating, "This is the truth." Religions or philosophical beliefs talk about afterlives and whether we believe in heaven or hell, karma, reincarnation, or meaninglessness. We all find it difficult to live with unknowing. There are many religions that claim to have a monopoly on the truth, and each of us must decide where we stand in relation to what they offer. Many religions result in us relinquishing responsibility for our own lives, instead blaming our challenges on being born in sin, or brought into the world to suffer. These are just belief systems, and the net effect of them is to stop questioning. Religions as belief systems are huge causes of separation and division on the planet, often used as the excuse for invasion, ethnic cleansing, and preferred ways of living. At its extreme it results in bloodshed, as evidenced by the Great Crusades on major wars, and at its least renders individuals powerless and able to only choose from a small diet of choices of how to live and be in the world. The vegan is often blamed for being like a religious zealot. However, instead of assuaging their existential anxiety by exposing an ideology on others, the ethical vegan is a voice speaking out for the oppressed non-human animal. The vegan invites us to refuse to be part of one of the biggest forms of superiority on the planet, speciesism. By becoming vegan, we not only stop financial animal cruelty through our consumption choices, but positively impact our environment, health, and potential to create a more compassionate world. Complicated. 7. Environment. There are numerous examples where something built as either having good or little to no negative impact on the environment, later turns out to have disastrous effects on the environment, people, and animals living nearby. For example, nuclear power is touted as a clean, safe energy source, but disasters like 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima reveal this is not so. Disasters on these scales are hard to hide, particularly as people rapidly become sick or die from radiation poisoning. This is not the case with environmental abuses which occur steadily beyond the public eye and where cause and effect are not clear. For example, fracking, the injection of chemicals into the ground to dissolve rock, so oil and gas can easily be extracted, has major detrimental effects on groundwater supplies. Many people have never heard of chemtrails, the alleged weather modification practices of spraying our aerosols in the atmosphere. Those who speak out against them are quickly labeled as conspiracy theories. However, in 1976, the Convention of the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques was held, making us question why such a convention would be necessary if weather modification technology didn't exist. Most people have seen campaigns imploring us to restrict our domestic water use, such as taking shorter showers, investing in water-efficient appliances, and limiting the watering of our gardens. The implication is that restricting our water use will have a major effect on dwindling water supplies. In Australia, over 67% of water is used for agriculture, whereas only 9% is for household use. CSIRO. Water use through food consumption is 90% of a household's water use. With third science and then 2007. This implies that for any water-saving effort to have an effect, it should be concentrated on indirect water use. The United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, have which 2010 concludes that an substantial reduction of climate impacts from agriculture would only be possible with a substantial worldwide diet change away from animal products. The vegan knows that we have been lied to about the effects of carnism, that not only is non-veganism a travesty against animals, it's destroying our environment and making people sick in the process. 8. Speciesism. Speciesism is the belief system that says that some species are more valuable than others, or that different members of the same species have different value. For example, in Western culture, companion animals are given legal protection against deliberate acts of cruelty, whereas animals waste for food do not share these rights. Fox 2017 says the term speciesism was coined by psychologist Richard Wilder in 1970 and refers to a prejudice similar to sexism or racism in that the treatment of individuals is determined by their membership of a particular group. Just as less value is placed on certain people based on their sex, gender, race, sexual orientation, or other defining characteristic, so too are animals afforded even less consideration and moral worth based on the fact they are a species other than human. When vegans talk about animal rights, they face resistance from non-vegans who say that human beings have greater value than animals and that animal testing, for example, is justified if it reduces human suffering. Even many feminists outraged by real or perceived inequalities or sexualization of women still eat animal products directly sourced from hijacking of animal female reproductive systems. These trans-like beliefs and actions of humans believing they are superior to animals and entitled to eat, use, and wear animals is deeply distressing to vegans who seek equality for all sentient beings. Client example. David, like many vegans, developed a deep disgust for human beings after discovering animal factory farming. His tolerance for non-vegans were very low, and if they didn't immediately or very soon become vegan after he told them, he relegated them to people who were despicable. This led him to become very depressed and hopeless about the potential of creating a vegan world. At the same time, he felt that his time away from animal rights campaigning was wasted, making him dread going to work. He lost interest in any activities and felt were relaxing or pleasurable, and he stopped going to the movies or exercising. He was reaching burnout when he came to see me. Anger is a normal part of the grieving process. The grief of suddenly seeing the truth that's hidden from us is often channeled into a dislike for anyone duped into being part of the cover-up. David developed more compassion towards others. He realized that people are so shocked that such deception is possible they resist this new information in order to prevent their world collapsing. Escaping your own rabbit hole. We live our lives and make decisions within these socially prevailing influences, hidden and explicit. In an economic environment that leaves us scant time to even think or research these things, we are socially programmed to believe that this is normal and to fit it in. You too must be normal. It's hard to break out of our own trance and engage with this process. We are also in our own personal rabbit holes and conditioned to think, behave, and feel in a certain way, so we don't know we need to ask questions. How does the average individual even begin to look at their own mental boundaries and ask different questions of how they are refusing to see anything differently? Veganism is a rising tide of social awareness, questioning the mental goal that has speciesism as at its root. Linked to this are the social and ideological institutions that cement the mental enslavement and the resultant collusion with prevailing norms. We have examined 10 of them above. The vegan has a challenging task ahead. After all, they are lifting the veil on beliefs, values, and behaviors the majority of the population are engaged in. When someone suggests a different viewpoint, it causes anxiety as people are challenged to see the world as not fixed and objective, and they must ask, what else don't I know? The vegan has become aware of the systemized cruelty towards animals and the trans-like collusion with this dystopian world. They are suffering from vystopia and now must navigate this new land and open other people up to the possibility that there is a better way to treat animals, people, and the planet with whom we share our lives. Veganism, the ultimate medium in trans breaking. The vegans' beliefs and behavior challenge the social norms the majority of people live by. Becoming vegan requires an individual to change their thinking and actions in ways that affect them every day. Each day, the vegan makes choices to seek out products and services that don't directly or indirectly abuse animals, and this takes time and energy. For the ethical vegan, this is not a problem but for someone not distressed by animal use, it can be seen as an inconvenience and of little importance. The vegan has also learned to question other societal beliefs many take for granted. The above list, while not exhaustive, indicates numerous areas which indicate that finding the truth is not always so easy. In our time-poor world, people are either too tired, indifferent, or confused to question the norm. Or stupid. The vegan is a modern-day whistleblower who not only implores us to change but questions everything, and for many this is so painful and a deep existential crisis which many are ill-equipped to navigate. Resource. This chapter identifies numerous ways in which social and cultural norms influence behavior. In The Myth of Life and the Choices We Have, 2005, I identify 8 myths or unquestioned assumptions that are personally, socially, or culturally determined and which limit the extent of our choices and decision making. It attempts to break us out of our own individual choices and ask different questions about who we are and in the infinite possibilities we have in how we want to live our lives. A full explanation of this myth is outside the remit of this book, but you can access a free copy of this book via http://claremann.com to find out how this myth influences your own life and how you can begin to break through the change that limit your thinking and what it is possible. Chapter 6, Creating a World to Belong to, page 99. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but what one must take it simply because it is right. Martin Luther King Jr. The world for the dystopian, as previous chapter revealed, is challenging and confronting. The burden of knowing is so great for so many that without help, a vegan world where animals are protected and treated with respect is a distant dream. Others see the growth of veganism and are optimistic and channel their energies into making this happen. For every vegan, a time comes when they either break down or break through. How can the vegan break through and be part of the solution? How can we create that vegan utopia where animals, people, and the planet are living in peace? How can you move from survival to waking up each day excited to be part of this eagerly anticipated better world. Client example. Rachel spent several years in a deep depression after learning about the live animal export trade, which resulted in her becoming vegan. She was horrified by how animals suffer arduous trips overseas, but it took her some time to realize the deep shame she carried since she had been born into a family overseas that was involved in the live trade. As a child, she hadn't realized what her family's business entailed, as they ensured she didn't see what happened to animals in abattoirs and religious festivals. Upon learning about live export, she started to put the pieces together and realized that her family's wealth had been built on the backs of animal suffering. Whilst it had not been her choice, she felt tainted with the actions of her family, yet couldn't face confronting them or jeopardizing what was already a difficult relationship. Instead of expressing her anger and confusion, she internalized her pain and became severely depressed. As a psychologist, I have never seen someone depressed without the presence of anger directly in words, rather than being worked through constructively. Depression can be a form of learned helplessness. Seligman, 1992, where the person feels powerless to change the situation and feels that anything they do won't change it ever. Despite Rachel experienced the shame she felt about her family background and the pain of knowing about animal suffering, she couldn't move out of her depression. However, when she decided to use her specific skills to speak out for animals, her depression started to lift. She learned that meaningful work and making a difference is a powerful way to transmute one's pain. Continues to be a major increase in the uptake of veganism around the world. New vegan options are appearing in supermarkets with entire sections created for vegan food. A huge number of vegan documentaries continue to be released, many being distributed on Netflix and watched by millions of the mainstream. Oh, shiver. Each day the media mentions something about veganism, from celebrities adopting plant-based diet to those speaking out against cruelty. We are truly witnessing a rise tide of awareness with veganism as the biggest social justice movement of our time. Despite the existence of the dystopian world, there is a lot to be optimistic about. There is a lot to be optimistic about. Being the invitation to play our part in creating a vegan world, you must become the best invitation you can be to others. In order to do that, you must put your own oxygen mask on first and walk through the grief and anguish of what you know, so you can become resourced to be the best voice for the animals. Although understandable, you have to move through the depth of anguish and misanthropy to envision a vegan world. As you will see later in this chapter, this not only makes your life enjoyable, but is essential to influence change at a global level. Here are 10 things you can do to resource yourself for the journey. I'm cold. 1. Practice good nutrition. To remain healthy, vibrant, and energized, it's important to adopt a whole food, plant-based diet. It not only It not only contains the essential range of nutrients for optimal health, but also facilitates healing and cell repair in the body, slows down the aging process, and alkalizes and energizes the body. Many vegans pay scant attention to nutrition, other than to ensure no animals are harmed for their meal. Avoid the highly processed vegan diet, which not only inhibits optimal health but results in sugar cravings, irritability or moodiness, and feeds the state of vystopia. 2. Exercise regularly. Find a regular exercise that you enjoy and which provides you with solitude or an opportunity to meet with others. Not only is exercise essential to build strength, stamina, and flexibility, it's directly linked with mood. Depression can be lifted with regular exercise as it's associated with the release of endorphins in the brain. Exercise helps you sleep better, aids digestion and raise energy levels. 3. Relax and have fun. Many animal advocates want to spend every spare bit of time they have in reducing the suffering of animals. Only then is this vystopia assuaged and they can live with the burden of knowing. Others feel guilty that they once financed animal cruelty with their consumer choices and won't allow themselves any enjoyment or ease. Remember, the animals need you next week, next month, and in the coming years to advocate for their freedom. If you burn out, you won't be able to help them, so factor some relaxation and fun in your life with like-minded others, so you can resource yourself to go much farther in the vegan movement. 4. Develop a positive mindset. Your thoughts, feelings, and experiences are intimately linked. When you feel something negative, the stress hormones, adrenaline, and cortisol are released and you feel negative sensations in your body. You're likely to then say something like, I feel awful, angry, or disgusted. This triggers more thoughts, which release more stress hormones, and this interaction results in labeling the emotion where you say, I am angry or defeated, or another label. Over time, the connection between your thoughts and feelings becomes so intertwined and automatic that the body remembers and it becomes a habit. The slightest trigger or association with the initially provocative information automatically results in the negative feeling and labeling of yourself as angry, resentful, depressed, or other similar words. When you see, hear, or think of something related to this topic, before you know it, you feel all the emotions as if you were experiencing the original provocative event. The same thing happens with positive emotions. This time, happy hormones are released. Dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin help you to feel hope, safety, and trust. In short, whatever you spend your time thinking and feeling creates your personal reality, and to change this, you must change the thoughts, feelings, and actions. By deliberately focusing on positive things, you start the process of change, but where negative thoughts are too deeply embedded, meditation can assist. 5. Meditation. Your mind and body do not know the difference between real and imagined events. For example, when you wake up in the middle of the night after a nightmare, your body shows all the symptoms of fear as if there were a real threat, such as increased heart rate, anxiety, fear, and sweating. Once you realize it is only a dream, you change your mind and personal reality. Yet moments before you felt that the threat was real. To create a new personal reality of thriving as a vegan, you must spend time focusing on the world you wish to create in your thoughts, feelings, and actions. I encourage you for as little as 5 minutes each day to visualize and experience the positive vegan world you want to create as if it was in the present moment. These steps are a powerful way to set a clear intention and associate it with an elevated state of positive emotion. Research from neuroscience and quantum physics reveals that our imagination doesn't just create a feel-good factor, it is correlated with physical reality. In short, what you concentrate on, you create. The more you focus on the positive effects of veganism rather than the stress and anxiety of consumerism, environmental damage, animal cruelty, or the fear-mongering media, the more positive you will become. You then become part of the rising tide of social awareness of veganism and bring that day closer. People around you will notice the difference and are more likely to trust you because there is congruence between what you say and what you truly feel. You feel avoid coming from a place of judging others, so they are more likely to listen because they feel you have their best interests at heart. This is the following link: http vegan action to life's external memories of experiences. It's your body and mind's way of telling your things are out of balance. Make a list of what causes you stress in your life and see what you can take out to create more ease. Avoid spending time around negative people or overcommitting to things that put too much pressure on you. Learn to say no and set boundaries with other people. Adopt stress-reducing practices like yoga or relaxation techniques so you can regularly bring yourself back to a state of calm, especially after advocating. 7. Educate yourself. Commit to lifelong learning about veganism so you become a well-informed individual who is able to speak with conviction and impact. Having facts and figures to hand will provide you with a level of gravitas to any discussion with non-vegans who are often quick to attack and ask you for evidence. Over time, you will acquire more information and by practicing having conversations about veganism, you will eagerly look forward to people asking you questions, knowing that you can back up your arguments with lots of relevant and powerful information. 8. Gather support. Across all losses and stressors in life, the biggest factor in a person walking through difficulties is the extent to which they have social support. Having others with whom you can share your feelings and seek guidance goes a long way in helping us recover and make sense of life's challenges. Invest in your relationships knowing that people need your support too. Many vegans only feel totally accepted by fellow vystopians, particularly when their pain is linked to what they know about animal exploitation. However, vegans also have lots of other concerns. Give or receive support, but ensure you jointly develop ways to navigate through the pain rather than allowing negativity and misanthropy to result. 9. Become your best ally. Many vegans traumatized by vystopia have a low self-esteem and blame themselves for not doing enough to help animals or convert other people into vegans. This self-blame can result in destructive habits and self-punishment rather than being your own best friend. Become your best ally, and through mindfulness, meditation, exercise, and other self-care regimes, you will develop a sanctuary within yourself which will sustain you over the years. You will also become an example of a calm, confident, and decent person who people aspire to follow. 10. Become an exquisite communicator. Communicating veganism can be challenging because people think you are directly criticizing their lifestyle and choices, and they resist that more than the reality of where their food, clothes, cosmetics, and other consumer goods come from. Thus, you must learn tools and techniques that enable you to have difficult conversations easily. Here are some key skills to help you. Challenge your own assumptions about other people's intentions. Great challenge. Remain open-minded and don't assume non-vegans don't care about what you are saying. Resistance is often due to self-consciousness or feeling blamed for the world's problems rather than resisting the content of your message. Develop active listening skills and ask more questions. Check out what other people mean and adjust your message when they don't understand. Pinpoint the hooks or topics that interest them and use this as a way to engage their interest. Common hooks include the environment, wildlife, animal ethics, or health. Focus on moving people along a continuum of awareness, see below, from having no interest in veganism to becoming vegan. Speak to people where they are at, realizing that most of us require repeated exposure to new ideas before we change our own beliefs. You don't have to do all the work. Realize that they will also hear about these issues from other people, TV adverts, and social media, and make a connection with subjects they are interested in. Ensure that your input to their continuum of increasing awareness is the best you can offer. By putting in place ways to resource yourself, you can then move from depression to optimism and start to engage, educate, and influence people to become vegan. Remember, when someone becomes vegan, they too enter vystopia and need help to work through their anguish and be part of the solution too. Many people see a distressed vegan and resist because they don't want to feel like that. You become attractive when you become the best example of a vegan who has not only worked through vystopia, but is a much happier, healthier person with a purpose. Become an increased communicator so you influence people to change. Learn to have difficult conversations where emotions are very high and people have different opinions and views. As a passionate vegan, you may want to tell them everything you know about the issues, but this can result in resistance. It's not always what the other person is interested in hearing, and forcing your own agenda won't establish rapport to allow you to explore other subjects later. Bombarding someone with details of animal cruelty in factory farms, while relevant and important to share, may result in resistance if they have indicated they are most interested in health or environmental protection. When you have explored their interests, you can add more information to expand their understanding. It's important to realize that you don't have to convert everyone on the spot, and a useful concept to understand this is the continuum of awareness. The continuum of awareness, when resistance are 10 ready to change. Imagine that every person you meet, including yourself, is on a journey towards increased consciousness, compassion, and awareness. Let's imagine it runs from 1 to 10, with 1 representing absolutely no interest in veganism and 10 indicating a person wanting to hear more and likely to become vegan soon. Your job is to listen carefully, to assess where they are on the continuum and provide information, insights, and become an education to move there towards increased awareness. You do this by identifying what is known as hooks, topics that literally hook the person in by providing them with something about veganism they are concerned with. For example, health, environment, animal cruelty, job security, spirituality, economics, traditions, social norms, philosophy, freedom of thought. For example, someone might ask you, where do you get your protein? If you answered, it's not all about you. Do you know how animals suffer in factory farms? You will make them confused or angry because they are asking you something about health. Remember, they may have never heard of a factory farm and certainly don't know as much as a passionate animal activist. By responding to their question about health, you establish rapport and can move into providing information about other issues, including animal social justice. By using hooks, you provide people with information to expand their thinking on an issue. If you use information that doesn't relate to their interests or current worldview, you will lose rapport. People see images or hear information and begin right away. Others take time. Your job is to move them along the continuum so they emotionally engage with the information and come to the conclusion on their own. After all, you don't want someone to have a knee-jerk reaction to an image and say they have changed in their mind, yet later revert to their old habits. You want them to change permanently. Time spent nudging them along the continuum provides greater probability that any change, attitude, values, or behavior will be permanent. The story of Gigi Pizzeria. A woman I didn't recognize said to me, "You know, it all started with you." She reminded me that her consumer in a health food shop in Sydney, Australia. She was curious as to why I returned a product containing milk. I had explained what happens in the dairy industry and how calves are taken from their mothers so humans can consume their milk. She was shocked, and I returned the next day with literature from Animals at Australia so they could read more about it. I left believing I'd done my best and didn't hear from her until I saw her 3 years later. She explained that she was horrified by what I told her and decided to do her own research. Over several months, she explored what happens to animals in the industrial process, and her worst fears were realized. Not only was my account true, but her eyes were opened to the billions of animals who suffer each year for our food, fashion, cosmetics, and entertainment. Although she made changes to her own life, the weight of knowing about animal suffering meant she had to go further. She called her family together to share what she had learned, a brave thing to do because her son won a well-known and successful Italian restaurant. Through her advocacy, her family made the collective decision to no longer collude with the suffering of animals for the sake of tradition, profit, or taste buds. They also decided to turn their successful restaurant vegan. That restaurant was Jiggy Pizzeria in Newtown, an inner-city suburb of Sydney. This example reminds us to communicate without judgment. Sometimes we never get to hear the effects of our advocacy, and other times we hear those wonderful words, "I've become vegan." I had a rare opportunity to learn how my advocacy contributed to this extraordinary family, putting these ethics before traditional and profit and choosing to veganize their restaurant. However, most of the time we don't get to hear what happens. Learn to collaborate. It's important to surround yourself with people who understand, share your values, and are positive. Apart from feeling supported and understood, larger principles underpin such social cultures that influence the growth of veganism. By learning about this, you will be encouraged to collaborate with others for reasons other than finding your own tribe and overcoming the alienation and loneliness that vystopians suffer. We'll now explore these three important factors to take into account of how social change happens. The tipping point. Marketers are aware that the uptake of products and services appears to follow a certain pattern. For example, in the 19th, few people believed that the mobile phone market would explode to such a point. People who saw the market's potential and invested early on are known as innovators, quickly followed by the early adopters. Uptake then gradually increased and suddenly appeared to gather momentum. Uptake starts to reach a critical mass as the early majority come on board, quickly followed by the late majority, these two groups making up the bulk of the market. Others either follow or give in. For example, the grandmother who realizes the only way to contact her grandchild is to get a mobile phone. This is also the same for changes in collective beliefs and ideas in society. For example, the early protagonists for the abolition of slavery were the innovators and early adopters. They faced enormous resistance by those who benefited from the trade. As this movement gathered momentum, it reached what Gladwell 2000 calls the tipping point, the moment of critical mass, the threshold, the boiling point, and a phenomenon that describes the pattern associated with mysterious sociological changes. Gladwell says ideas, products, messages, and behaviors spread like viruses do. Increasingly, teenage vegans are referred to me who say, "I just had this awareness and know it is wrong to eat animals." Many of them hadn't seen anything on veganism or spoken to anyone about animal exploitation. It is my belief that this is an example of what Jung, 1969, calls the collective unconscious, the structures of the unconscious mind which are shared among beings of the same species. This is encouraging for vegans who often feel helpless and can see how a vegan world will happen in their lifetimes. Concepts of the tipping point, collective unconscious, and entertainment are indications of how and why veganism appears to be growing rapidly. Entertainment. In 1665, Christian Huygens, whilst working on the design of the pendulum clock, found that when he placed two of them on the wall near each other and swung the pendulums at different weights, they eventually ended up swinging in at the same weight. This is due to their mutual influence on one another. He calls this entrainment and defined it as a tendency for two oscillating bodies to lock into phase so that they vibrate in harmony or synchronize over two or more rhythmic cycles. This phenomenon of matter synchronizing appears to be universal, appearing in chemistry, pharmacology, biology, medicine, psychology, sociology, astronomy, and architecture. For example, women living in the same household or sharing the same workplace find their menstrual cycles coincide and often the heart muscles of people in close proximity begin pulsating in synchronicity. Vegans often feel depressed, wondering how sufficient people are going to change for veganism to be the new norm. They tell me that they despair for people they believe are so selfish they will never stop eating or using animals. The concept of entrainment is an encouraging one for vegans, reminding us of the importance of playing our part in being the example we want others to entrain to. By shifting our focus from how awful the world is to taking action every day to provide practical ways in which we can collaborate better with other vegans to spread this process up. Spiral dynamics. The original book on spiral dynamics is a complex read revealing the hidden codes that shape human nature, create global diversities, and drive evolutionary change. The authors talk about the magnetic forces that attract and repel individuals from the webs that connect people within organizations and influence the rise and fall of nations and cultures. The book tracks our historic emergence from clans to tribes to networks and interconnected networks. It identifies 7 variations on how change occurs in individuals, society, and leadership. I believe the relevance of veganism is in appreciating there are different levels of consciousness in society. For example, a vegan passionate about the ethical treatment of animals would be faced with resistance from a hunter with a more tribal level of consciousness. According to spiral dynamics model, it would be like two people from different planets communicating. Another example would be a community outraged by the influence of veganism on local employment as demand for dairy reduces. By understanding where other people or groups are coming from, we can adapt the way in which we communicate. If we talk ethics and non-speciesism to people focused primarily on job security and local or cultural traditions, we will face resistance. In this chapter, I talk about using the hooks to engage people with their concerns and then introduce other topics nearer to the ethical imperative of veganism. Client example. Angela was an active animal advocate and regularly attended rallies and vigils and signed petitions. She felt pleased to be part of animal groups she believed were making a difference to the lives of animals. However, the more involved she got, the more frustrated she became with people who took a more welfare-based approach to animal social justice rather than an abolitionist one. She became angry at people who campaigned for better conditions for animals or encouraged things like meat-free Monday or gradual transition to a vegan diet. Instead of expressing her views constructively, she started to attack anyone who didn't take an abolitionist perspective, and many people left online groups as a result of the animosity she felt in online discussions. Angela's reaction is typical of many vegans who empathize deeply with animal suffering and believe progress is only possible when animals are not used in any way by humans. Not only was Angela deeply distressed by seeing the suffering of animals firsthand, she was further immobilized by her anger and frustration and wondered if change for animals would ever be possible. By channeling her anger away from criticizing the shortcomings of others, she felt more empowered and less exhausted. Whilst holding strict abolitionist views, she started to see that criticizing others was counterproductive to helping animals and whilst people were fighting amongst themselves, they were not focusing on animals. She learned to be more compassionate for where people are in their journey and researched how social change comes about. Whilst she would prefer that people change immediately, she realized that people often don't change that quickly and the net outcome and a better life for all animals was a better focus than the differences in ideologies. Fighting a community. To maximize your advocacy, join a community who are collaboratively working together towards a common goal. The best communities are those who share a very clear vision of the compassionate and kind world they wish to create rather than engaging in infighting and politics. These unfortunate actions occur when people haven't sufficiently worked through their vystopia and fuel their grief and anger in dysfunctional ways. Groups that help members work through their difficulties and improve their communication skills and understand group dynamics are those who truly collaborate towards collectively aligned objectives underpinned by the global goal of veganism. Principles of collaboration. Many organizations comprise people working in silos on different projects who only engage with other groups when absolutely necessary. Members tend to identify primarily with their own group and often resist collaborating and learning from others. To improve the situation, a consultant would work to remove barriers, increase communication between and within groups, and create mutual understanding to achieve better collective outcomes. One of the biggest limitations to improved working is related to the unquestioned assumptions people hold about what is happening. Without high levels of self-awareness, people often fail to question their assumptions about other people and how things should be done. These preconceived ideas result in prejudice and stereotypes that inhibit people connecting and collaborating for mutual benefit. It's important to teach people ways to continually question their assumptions, and own their part in creating the outcomes of every interpersonal interaction they have. This, together with learning to communicate effectively and skillfully navigate differences, has the potential to create relationships, groups, and organizations that achieve superior outcomes and are satisfying communities to work in. Vegan and animal advocacy groups are not different from other groups or larger organizations. They comprise diverse types of people with different backgrounds, viewpoints, skills, and ideas of how to get the job done. High levels of emotion associated with animal welfare and veganism provides one of the biggest opportunities and yet one of the biggest challenges. High emotions may compound misunderstandings and differences of opinion and result in conflict, whilst strong emotion, when channeled effectively, is a uniting motivator for action. The collaborative vegan community. How can high levels of emotion and commitment to veganism be channeled constructively to enhance animal social justice rather than create conflict, despair, and frustration? For example, we often see high emotion and criticism expressed in social media, which is damaging if there is no ability to effectively work through the resultant conflict. Technology provides amazing tools to connect and collaborate, but we must still learn the skills of managing ourselves effectively and creating good relationships with exquisite communication in environments of high stress. By applying the wisdom of lessons learned from psychology to animal advocacy, groups offered by technology, individual self-awareness, group dynamics, communication skills, organizational culture. Individual self-awareness. In order to contribute your best as an employee or volunteer in animal social justice, one of the best things you can do is to develop high levels of self-awareness. You must become aware of when your buttons are pressed, of the patterns we repeat in relationships, and how we come across to other people. By identifying your unquestioned assumptions, you can avoid hasty judgments, challenge your conclusions, and remain open-minded. This increases your ability to form good relationships with other people and collaborate effectively. Group dynamics. A group comprises individuals who identify with a group and share a common purpose. The extent in which group norms are adhered to determines how cohesive the group is. Groups often avoid talking about difficult subjects, fearing it will cause conflict. Whilst counterintuitive, it is essential for groups to air their differences and create a platform of trust and mutual respect in which opinions can be discussed. Without this, groups never become truly effective because unresolved differences inhibit effective collaboration. Communication skills. You must learn to effectively communicate with other people by creating reports and having meaningful conversations with people, many of whom will resist or criticize the message of animal social justice or veganism, which applies non-violence. There are skills you can learn to confidently convey difficult information effectively without aggression or backing down even when the information is distressing. With help and practice, it does become easier. Organizational culture. An organizational or group culture comprises an explicit and implicit understanding amongst members of how things operate. An effective culture fosters the collective needs of people who identify with it and unify under a cohesive set of rules. This occurs with effective leadership, a shared vision, and people feeling they belong and know the rules within which the organization operates. Without a culture that fosters commitment, contribution, and mutual respect, politics, infighting, and sabotage often occur. We are living in a time in history when we have the means to communicate instantly with people all over the globe. People can be called together physically or virtually within hours rather than the months it previously took to galvanize people into action. In order to truly benefit from these wonderful new communication platforms, we have to ensure we invest in our individual, group, and cultural development. Only then can we effectively collaborate and come together with other groups and be an even greater collective voice for animals. By increasing our self-awareness, understanding group dynamics, and applying exquisite skills of communication, we have an opportunity to partake in dramatically changing the fate of billions of animals who currently are subject to use and exploitation by humans. The sheer number of animals whose lives stand to change for the better makes this the largest social justice movement on the planet. Whatever animal or vegan group we belong to, we are effectively doing the same work. Each of us is attracted to different aspects of animal social justice. Some of us work on the front line, involved in direct or will uncover work like factory farming or vivisection. Others worked on lobbying governments and industry to make changes in legislation and policy. Some of us enjoy working locally with hands-on wildlife care, whilst others simply make more ethical consumer choices about the products we purchase. All these actions contribute to a kinder world for animals and ultimately for people and the planet. It starts with us as individuals. How we choose to conduct ourselves is an act of leadership and an example to others of how we want the world to be. We must each be the best we can be, a self-reflective individual who can proudly answer yes to the question, would I follow me? Becoming part of the global vegan relay team. Imagine you are a part of an international sales team who have been tasked with the job of selling the most amazing solution for vast majority of the world's problems. You hold the solution for the current global challenges for human health, environment, social justice, the economy, consciousness, and spiritual growth. The customer is every person on the planet. What training will your team need to convey the solution and match it to the problems the customer is facing? Surely a team tasked to deliver such promises would have a clear strategy and sales process. Or would they ring conversations with customers and get annoyed that a nod at them when they don't buy the solution offered. Well, if you are a vegan within this, you are part of this sales team. You may feel resistant to selling, believing that the current financial and economic system is based on selling and perpetuate a system of greed, and are averse to selling products and services on the back of human, animal, and environmental suffering. If so, how do you feel that you've been recruited to this new vegan global sales team? Also, if you use this sales analogy, there are other customers who'll benefit from your endeavors, the animals. And they are silent, you're unsure they even know you're working at a global level to improve their quality of life, and you can easily canvass their feedback on how well we are all doing our job. How do you feel about selling veganism? Faced with the responsibility, you may feel you're facing this task with no real training, only skills you've acquired along the way. You may feel alone in the process or wish you had more information to hand to convince people to buy the solution of veganism. You may long for linguistic mastery to deal with buyer resistance or would like help in upselling them from vegetarianism or vegetarianism to veganism. The crème de la crème solution which involves the biggest investment and yet the greatest reward. Crème de la crème. You won't have the chance to meet all the sales team, practice selling with them, or ensure your sales materials are well branded and professional. However, we are all relying on each other to do a great job of offering the solution. It's hard because no one likes rejection, and when we offer the solution, our customers often deny they have a problem, psychology, and understand that cycle is short and sometimes long. Some people buy on the spot, others buy lesser priced products, and when satisfied make higher investments. There are real customers who say no or not yet because they are insufficiently convinced of the solution. Sometimes we have to wait because it's not until sufficient people change that they decide to keep us with the genesis or become convinced by the latest celebrity. What do you need to be a great vegan salesperson? 1. Mind shift change. You must believe in your ability to communicate and sell veganism. If you feel anxious and tongue-tied, your whole neurology will work against you. When you are discussing animal cruelty, for example, you will often feel anxious and in pain. When this discomfort or anger occurs, blood flows from your frontal cortex to the reptilian brain at the back of your head. This is the fight or flight red zone where it's difficult to stay calm, confident, and convincing. The same thing occurs for the listener, resulting in resistance and comments like, "Don't tell me anymore." The good news is that there's a contagion effect, and if you can keep calm and empathize with the person struggling to receive this challenging information, you will influence their blood to flow to the frontal cortex with the increased likelihood that they will listen to you. You must regularly practice techniques to remain calm, like meditation, positive self-talk, increasing confidence through communication mastery, and seeking out social support from other vegans. A useful technique to calm yourself and move the blood to the frontal cortex is witness for these challenging conversations is Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT. For a short video on this technique, visit http://clareman.com/enstress. Understanding neuroscience and the parts of the brain responsible for decision making and emotional responses is invaluable because common knowledge among people indicates that people buy with emotion and back up their decisions with logic. The information you share must evoke as a sufficiently emotional response, requiring them to want a solution which can be reinforced with logic. Such logic is influenced by providing them with facts, figures, and evidence that veganism works. People buy from people they like, so by learning to be empathic, non-judgmental, and supportive of where they are in their journey, they will learn to trust you and other members of the vegan sales team and say that magic phrase every vegan wants to hear. That interesting. Tell me more. To a sales process. When engaging people to talk about veganism, it's best not to wing your conversations or play them by ear. Whilst you don't want to be too prescriptive, it's important to develop a sales process to move them along the continuum from not interested to tell me more or even better, I am becoming a vegan. Not, you may need several conversations for them to become vegan and they may not all be with you. They will also be influenced by videos, TV adverts, media reports on animal cruelty, and other sources of information. Once you start the conversation, they won't be able to see issues around animal cruelty and veganism in the same light. New information about the subject will activate what you told them, so it's important that you make a good impression and provide information to back up your claims. Here are some key principles. A. Make a contract. Tell the person that you would like to talk to them about and get agreement to discuss it. When they say yes, you can refer back to this later when they say I can't continue discussing this. Their comment isn't then a signal to stop, but merely to modify the intensity of the information you share. B. Use questions to elicit their motivation. Ask lots of questions to ascertain their understanding, interest, and problems around health, social justice, environment, and social concerns. Then you can position the vegan message so it meets their needs. If you insist on talking about animal cruelty when they are asking about diet or environmental sustainability, they are switch off. Listen, ask questions, and provide information relative to the person's needs. You can add other information later when they say, tell me more. C. Handle resistance. It is normal and predictable for someone to resist changing their attitudes and behavior. When a person resists what you are telling them, instead of saying and judging them as blind and selfish, see resistance as positive. Appreciate that you've elicited an emotional response in them. They are uncomfortable and will want to remove that discomfort. They can choose to ignore what you've told them, which is often more difficult than they think, or seek a solution. Resistance in any sales process occurs for four main reasons, and in the context of veganism, typical responses include money, I can't afford to be a vegan and buy fresh food and vegetables. Time, I don't have time to prepare vegan food. Need, I'm not sufficiently convinced if I could live without meat or dairy. Urgency, I'll rethink about it later as it's not pressing me for now. Present for me now. Trust, I don't believe you. By saying resistance as positive, indicating that you must answer their concerns, you will become empowered rather than believing it's futile and some people will never change. D. Sales materials to support your arguments. Provide information and evidence that veganism is a solution. Use testimonials and case studies of people who have benefited from adopted veganism. Send links to videos or articles with evidence of the positive changes that result when they adopt veganism. A. Provide the solution. Provide as much information as you can relevant to their interests, questions, and willingness to receive it. Follow up with information to back your claims and always make a time to talk to them when they have had time to review it. Remember, you may not close the sale and hear them say, yes, I'm becoming vegan. You are part of the global vegan sales team, and your contribution is to influence people every day to adopt veganism. Likewise, when someone tells you they are becoming vegan, it is likely that another member of the team influenced their decision. 3. Exercise communication skills. As indicated throughout this book, you must become a great communicator so you can influence people to become vegan. Partner with non-vegans and talk to them to live in a non-vegan world. Learn to listen and position your responses relative to their needs, gain rapport, and build a relationship based on trust so they don't shoot the messenger when they receive challenging information. Communicating veganism is like running a relay race. You tell somebody something, later they see a TV advert or something on social media, and one day the tipping point comes, their resistance reduces, and they choose veganism or as I prefer to say, they return to their vegan birthright. Some may never become vegan in their lifetime, but every conversation will all have contribute to a vegan world becoming the norm. Your job is to be a great salesperson, so you don't let the team or the animals down. Why next? What next? Page 125. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. Mahatma Gandhi. It's time to transform the anguish of your vystopia into effective action for change. Your anguish must become a powerful, intrinsic motivator burning within you, only assuaged by you taking inspired action every day. Those actions must be aligned with that bigger vision of the compassionate world you want to be part of. Not everyone needs to be on the world stage or doing frontline work with animals. We all have different gifts which, when shared regularly, have the capacity to change the world. For that, what your gift is in this global movement, refine and practice it regularly. It may be something you love to do, but you don't allow yourself because you think it takes attention away from advocacy. For example, if you love movies and cooking, invite people to your home for an exquisite vegan meal followed by a vegan film and conversation. If you love bushwalking, take your friends walking and casually raise the effects of consumer action on the environment and wildlife. And don't forget to include vegan treats. Someone I know went out his holiday house with no television, but a video recorder and library of vegan documentaries. Such actions, when practiced regularly, move people along the individual continuums of awareness and collectively move us all towards the tipping point of global change. Resource yourself every day to share the truth and break over people out of their trances. Learn to communicate calmly, factually, and powerfully so they start to question what they've been told and become uncomfortable colliding with the deception. Most people are nearer to veganism than you think because they recognize the truth when they hear it. Remember when you dropped a pebble into the water, you don't know where the ripples stop. Whether you return a product because it contains dairy and the restaurant becomes vegan. Wow. I wonder how many of us have become vegan because that restaurant led the way, itching us towards our vegan utopia. I look forward to seeing you on a journey. Page 129 Resources. Watch Conspiracy Environment on Netflix. Dominion Australian Animals Rights. Earthlings Terrien. Vegan Animals Rights YouTube. Economics of Happiness Economic. Food Inc. Factory Farming YouTube. Food Matters Food Health YouTube. Facts of a Nice Veganism Health Netflix. Hungry for Change Food Health Ethics of Food. Norms Social Conformity. Visible Kingdom Vegan Animals Rights YouTube. The Corporation Economics What's Health Netflix. Read Becoming Vegan Express Edition 2013 Brenda Davis and Vicente Medina. So Why Become Vegan 2011 Sandra Kimler. Staying Positive in a Up World 2018 Ash Nayet. The China Study 2016 T. Colin Campbell. The Ethics of What We Eat 2006 Jim Mason and Peter Singer. The Minimalist Vegan, a Simply Manifesto on Why to Live with Less Stuff and More Compassion 2017 Massa Offey and Michael Offey. Ubuntu Contributionism 2013 Michael Tillinger. Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs and Wear Cows 2011 Melanie Joy. Psychological support. You know how crippling is to live in a non-vegan world. Clare is a vegan psychologist who understands those challenges. Programs and resources to turn despair into positive action, have conversations with ease, communicate with impact, influence others to change, thrive and enjoy life as a vegan. Veganpsychologist.com. Vegan Forces, training and resources to thrive as a vegan. App available on Apple and Android. www.veganvoices.com. Glossary of Term, page 133. 269. A bird who was rescued as a calf by anonymous activists days before his planned slaughtered. Abolitionism, referring to the freedom of black slaves in early 19th century America, animal welfare and animals' physical and emotional needs. Biosecurity, preventative measures designed to protect a population from biological harm such as infection. Bobby calves, newborn male colts routinely removed from their mothers within 2 to 24 hours of birth, slaughtered within their first week of life, or within 3 months of life if raised for veal meat. Burden of knowing, the burden of pain, of emotion, and responsibility which comes with certain knowledge. Carnism, a term coined by vegan activist and psychologist Melanie Joy, relating to the classification of certain animals as edible food and the acceptance of routine animal harm as normal or necessary. Chemtrails, a trail left in the sky by aircraft, believed by some people to contain chemical agents. CIA, Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. Conspiracy theory, a belief that a particular organization is responsible for an otherwise explainable event, often linked to government or powerful organizations. CSIRO, Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, an agency of the Australian federal government. Dystopia, a place or state usually imagined where everything is bad, often connected with environmental degradation, widespread disease, or political totalitarianism. Eating disorder, a psychological condition manifesting as disturbed behaviors surrounding food and eating. Examples include anorexia, nervosia, and bulimia. Existentialism, a theory of philosophy focused on the existence of an individual within the world. The theory holds that humans have free will, freedom, and the choice to define their own path in life. Factory farming, a form of modern animal agriculture with a focus on profit and efficacy over animal welfare. Free range, allowing farmed animals to roam outside of confined spaces. The definition of free range varies, and some small confined spaces are described in Genesis. The Garden of Eden is where God intended humanity to live in peace and innocence. Mental anguish, a type of mental suffering which includes a variety of symptoms such as distress, anxiety, grief, or depression. Misanthropy, a hatred, dislike, distrust, or contempt of humankind. NSA, National Security Agency of the United States of America, functions as the intelligence agency for the Department of Defense. Self-harm, deliberate injury to one's own body, often connected with psychological disorders. Speciesism, the belief that humans are superior to animals and therefore animals may be exploited for human gain. Stall-free, the farming of pigs without the use of space confining movement restricting stalls. Systematized cruelty, the torture, cruelty, and exploitation of animals as part of the social and agricultural system, which is perceived as normal and necessary. United Nations, an international government agency committed to worldwide peace, security, social progress, and human rights. Utopia, a fictional community or world in which living standards are perfect for each citizen, while willful ignorance, keeping oneself in a state of deliberate ignorance, so as to avoid the responsibility and liability of knowing the facts. World Health Organization, an agency of the United Nations which specializes in international public health. References, page 147. I don't read. Other publications. Communicate how to say what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, in the way it needs to be said. Skills-based book with proven tools and techniques to make communication your strength. The Myth of Life and the Choices We Have, self-help book, with 50 exercises to expand one's notion of choice, freedom and responsibility based on existential philosophy. Human Resource Development, Strategy and Tactics, co-authored textbooks for leaders, managers, and university professionals on applied strategic HRD. The Ethical Futures magazine is on a digital publication championing business and thought leaders whose practices and are based on ethical leadership principles. Page 140, about Clare, BSc Honors, MSc CMA Postgrad Deep COCC Cycle FBPS AMAPS. Clare is an Australian-based psychologist, existential psychotherapist, bestseller author, speaker, and communications trainer. She consults with people worldwide to help address the personal and social challenges of being vegan and living in a non-vegan world. She provides training to major animal rights organizations in Australia and speaks regularly at vegan and animal rights conferences, rallies, and festivals. She runs public and in-house training programs in communication, team building, and ethical leadership, and regularly appears on TV and in the press. She has authored and contributed to numerous books. One of her books, Communicate, has international acclaim written by U.S. presidential advisor Doug Wade. The principles within underpin skills training she provides for vegans. She is editor-in-chief of a digital business magazine, Ethical Futures, Conversations That Matter, that reaches businesses with the message of animal, environmental, and human justice. She is a co-founder of the Vegan Voices smartphone app, a free 30-day video training with tools and techniques to respond to typical communication challenges faced by vegans, as well as resources to support the information they share. She co-contributor to the Sydney Vegan Club 30-Day Vegan Challenge. The book plans proud women and everyday vegans, and a regular contributor to numerous vegan magazines and podcasts. She provides face-to-face and online skills training to help vegans and animal advocates communicate more effectively, and animal welfare organizations collaborate for increased effectiveness. Next reading, How to Create a Vegan World, a Pragmatic Approach by Tobias Leinart, forward by Peter Singer. Yes.